Tonight, if you want heat, you turn a knob. Flame appears. You do not think about it. But for most of human history, fire was not something humans could summon whenever they wanted. It was something they found, something they protected, something they carried. One dead ember could mean a colder night, raw food, and darkness closing in around the cave. So, how did ancient humans actually learn to make fire? The answer begins with something most people get wrong from the start. Making fire was not the first problem. Finding it was. Keeping it alive was. Only much later did humans learn how to create it on command. And that difference changed everything. For most of human prehistory, fire came from somewhere else. Not from human hands, not from human knowledge, from the world itself. Lightning struck a dead tree and left it burning. A volcanic vent cracked open along a ridge, and the ground caught flame. A wildfire swept through dry savanna grass during the long, hot season, and in its wake, a field of slow embers cooled in the open air. That was fire. That was how ancient humans first encountered it. Not by making it, by being there when it happened. The oldest strong evidence we have of humans using fire comes from Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa. Researchers found burned bone and ashed plant remains deep inside the cave, dating to roughly 1 million years ago. Not a fire pit, not a hearth, not a system deliberately built. That does not prove those early humans could make fire from scratch, but it does suggest something important. Fire was being used in a place where natural wildfire alone is difficult to explain. They may not have lit that fire, they may have inherited it. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Because finding fire was only the beginning of the problem. Keeping it alive was something else entirely. Fire needs fuel. It needs oxygen. It needs attention. Let it die overnight, and you wake up cold, with raw meat, and the kind of darkness that predators can use, and you cannot. Lose your fire during a rainstorm, and getting it back could mean days of waiting for another lightning strike, another wildfire, another moment when the world decided to give you what you needed. So someone had to watch it. Every night, every storm, every river crossing. Think about what that actually meant for a group of 10 or 20 people moving through a landscape. When the group moved, someone carried a burning branch, cupped in their hands, protected from wind. When they camped, someone stayed awake to feed it. When a storm rolled in, someone built a windbreak around it and prayed it would hold. The people who were good at keeping fire were not just useful, they were essential. In the same way that a group with a skilled hunter ate better, a group with a skilled firekeeper survived better. This was a role, a responsibility, something that had to be learned, practiced, and passed on. Fire, even before humans could make it, was already a social technology. So when did ancient humans actually learn to produce fire themselves? To stop waiting for the world and start commanding it? The honest answer is that the archaeological record on this is still being pieced together. By roughly 3 to 400,000 years ago, at Qesem Cave in Israel, there is strong evidence of repeated, deliberate fire use in the same location. A hearth, not an accident, not a single event, but a place where fire was maintained on purpose, over and over, across generations. The ashes at Qesem Cave tell a story of people who understood fire well enough to build a system around it. And around the same period, something important was happening in Europe. Later studies of Neanderthal tools have found wear patterns on certain flint tools, suggesting they were struck against iron pyrite to produce sparks. Strike the right stone against iron pyrite at the right angle, and a spark jumps. Catch that spark in dry tinder, a piece of fungus, a pinch of plant fiber, and nurse it carefully, and you have the beginning of a flame. But stone against stone was not the only path. Another method used friction. Wood against wood, a stick spun against a flat wooden base, pressure against motion, until heat built inside a small pile of dark wood dust. The right combination of pressure, speed, and dry material could produce a tiny glowing coal buried in the dust. But even then, nothing was guaranteed. Wrong wood failed. Damp wood failed. The wrong angle failed. Too little pressure produced nothing. Too much interrupted the motion. And even success did not give you a flame. It gave you a coal that still had to be protected, fed, and breathed carefully into life. None of this was something you figured out alone in an afternoon. Which raises the question that is easy to overlook. How did anyone know which stones to use? Which wood? Which tinder? A stone does not teach itself. Every complex skill that requires specific, non obvious knowledge has to move from one person to another through deliberate teaching, watching, practicing, failing, being shown again. The right stone chosen from dozens that look similar. The right motion maintained for minutes without stopping. The right moment to stop blowing and let the tinder breathe. The moment firemaking required that kind of knowledge transfer, it stopped being just a survival tool and became something else. Information that could survive the death of its discoverer. Information that could travel between groups, improve over generations, accumulate into something more sophisticated than any single person could have invented alone. Richard Wrangham, a primatologist at Harvard, has argued that the shift to consistent fire use, and especially to cooking with fire, may have been one of the most significant turning points in human biological history. Cooking can make certain foods easier to digest and can increase the energy humans are able to extract from them. The shift toward cooked food may have helped support the maintenance of larger brains over time, though researchers continue to debate the precise relationship. Fire did not just warm the body. It may have changed what the body was capable of becoming. There is something else that fire did, something harder to measure but equally important. It changed the night. Before reliable fire, darkness was genuinely dangerous. Predators with better low-light vision had an advantage humans could not overcome. The useful day ended at sunset, and the hours between dark and dawn were hours of exposure, vulnerability, waiting. Fire pushed that boundary back. It extended the day into the night. It created warmth that allowed people to stay awake, stay close, stay together. And in those extended hours, around the light, something started to happen that may have supported storytelling, ritual, memory, and the shared imagination behind culture. People talked. Not the functional communication of the hunt, the quick signals of danger or direction, the longer, slower kind of talking. Stories. The kind that requires someone to sit still and listen, and someone else to hold a thread from beginning all the way through to the end. Anthropologist Polly Weissner studied the conversations of the Jew Hoansi people of the Kalahari and found that daytime talk was dominated by practical matters. Nighttime talk, around the fire, shifted strongly towards stories, narrative, the recounting of events from near and far, from now and long ago. In her data, the overwhelming majority of lengthy nighttime conversations involving groups of people centered on stories rather than logistics. Fire did not just keep humans warm. It created the setting where something we now call culture had room to develop. We still feel this. Some studies suggest that even a few nights of camping without artificial light can begin to shift the human sleep cycle, melatonin timing moving back toward natural dark and dawn within a week. The nervous system, underneath decades of electric light, still responds to actual darkness. We still gather around fire, not always literally, but the behavior remains. A candle on a dinner table draws people into a smaller circle, lower voices, slower conversation. A campfire does the same thing. It did 100,000 years ago, orients a group of people inward, toward each other, and toward the light. The ancient program is still running. It just has fewer opportunities to show itself. So, the full answer to how ancient humans made fire is not a single discovery. It is a sequence that took an enormous amount of time. First, they found it, from lightning, from volcanoes, from the world's occasional gifts of flame. Then, they kept it, learned to feed it, protect it, carry it, and guard it through the night as if it were alive. Because in every meaningful sense, it was. Then they made it, developed techniques, both percussion and friction, that required specific knowledge and the ability to pass that knowledge across generations. And then they controlled it, built hearths, cooked food, extended the night, and gathered around the light to do something no other animal has ever done. They told each other stories about it. Found fire is opportunity. Made fire is command. So, how did ancient humans make fire? Not easily, not quickly, and never alone. They found it first, grabbed it from lightning strikes and dying wildfires, and carried it home like something precious, because it was. Then, they spent hundreds of thousands of years learning to keep it alive before they ever learned to create it themselves. Then, slowly, through percussion and friction, and the hard-won knowledge passed from one pair of hands to another, they learned to make it on demand. Found fire is opportunity. Made fire is command. But here is the part that stays with me. The spark was never the hardest part. Keeping it alive through the rain, through the night, through the generations, that was the real skill. And we still carry it. Every time people gather around a fire, a candle, a screen, something in the nervous system recognizes the arrangement, the circle, the light, the lowered voices. We inherited that too. So here is the question. If you had to spend one night without electricity, no heat, no stove, no light, do you think you could keep yourself warm? Or would you be hoping someone nearby already knew how? Leave your answer in the comments. I want to know how many people think they could actually survive it. This channel is about ancient humans, survival, and the old instincts still hiding inside modern life. If that is what you have been looking for, subscribe. There is a new story here every week.